Hello everyone. Tonight, we're going somewhere dark, somewhere muddy, somewhere cold. We're diving into what the life of a medieval peasant was really like. This is not the world of kings or knights. There are no tournaments, no jeweled crowns, no velvet robes. Just dirt floors, aching backs, and lives lived in silence, bent under the weight of a feudal world that asked much and gave very little. Before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you like my content. Your support truly means a lot to me. Also, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I'm genuinely interested in knowing who is joining us from around the world. Dim the lights. Let your shoulders fall. Maybe wrap yourself in a blanket and let your mind step softly into another time. Because tonight, we'll walk through a full day in the life of a medieval peasant. From dawn to dusk, from hunger to hardship, from the quiet hope of spring to the grey stillness of a winter evening. It will not be a grand story. It will be a small one. But sometimes it's the small stories that carry us into sleep the best. Welcome to the life of a medieval peasant. A life so far from comfort, so bound by toil, that most of us wouldn't last a single day. It begins before sunrise. The rooster hasn't crowed yet, but already the village begins to stir. Not with alarm clocks or phone buzzes, but with the groan of wooden beams in the cold. The cottage is dark, the only light coming from the faint blue-grey of the pre-dawn sky slipping through the cracks in the wooden shutters. There's no glass, of course. That luxury is reserved for churches and castles. Here, in this one-room house, the air is thick with last night's smoke, and the faint, familiar smell of cabbage, ash, and wet wool. You sleep on a sack of straw, if you can call it sleep. The sack is thin, lumpy, and smells faintly of mildew. Your back hurts before you even sit up. A handful of fleas or lice have spent the night feasting quietly on your skin. You scratch idly without opening your eyes. There's a cold draft pushing through the walls made of wattle and daub, a mix of mud, manure, and sticks that somehow manages to be both too damp and too dry all at once. A mouse scurries across the floor nearby. It isn't unusual. You're used to sharing space, not just with your family, but with the animals too. Somewhere in the far corner of the room, a chicken flutters against the coop's edge, disturbed by a movement in the dark. The family pig is snoring, louder than you'd expect, and its warm, earthy scent fills the air. The pig, oddly enough, may be the warmest member of your household. You keep it inside through the colder months, not for company, but for heat. It's one of the only things of value you own, and you guard it like a treasure. You stretch cautiously. Your joints creak more than you'd like. You're not old, but your body feels much older than your age. Life bends you early here. Even children walk with a certain tiredness, a slowness that doesn't come from laziness but from long days, heavy buckets, and hands worn raw from rope, wood, and earth. The fire has gone out in the hearth, leaving only a few smouldering embers and a layer of pale ash. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, and smoke from last night's cooking still hangs low in the air, clinging to the thatch above. Your lungs sting a little, but you're used to it. Everyone coughs in the mornings. Everyone wheezes through winter. Someone, probably your eldest child or your mother, stirs the coals, trying to coax a small flame from what remains. The light flickers briefly, revealing the faces of your family, one by one. Pale, lined, hair tangled from sleep. No one says anything. Talking in the morning is a luxury, and there's too much to do. A pot is set over the fire, and someone pours in a little water. Thin porridge today. Again, the floor is cold under your bare feet. You pull on rough woolen hose, mended many times, still full of holes, and fasten a coarse tunic with a bit of twine. There are no buttons, no zippers, no underclothes beyond the basics, just layers of homespun wool and linen, dyed brown with walnut shells or left the colour of dust and time. You hope it doesn't rain today, though it probably will. It always does. And when it doesn't, the mud stays anyway. Your shoes, if you have them, are little more than leather wrappings, stiff with dried mud and cracked from use. You don't wear them indoors. They're precious. Some days you go without. Many peasants do. The ground is unforgiving. So are the thorns and the rocks and the frozen soil in winter. By now, the rooster has found its voice, and its shrill crow cuts through the air like a bell. Outside, the village stirs in earnest. Smoke rises from other hearths. Dogs bark. Somewhere, someone is already yelling. A child late for his chore, or a man cursing a broken cartwheel. Life here is noisy, not from machines, but from people. Loud, tired, grumbling people, starting another day that looks exactly like the one before it. You step outside, into the morning gloom. Your breath comes out in a pale cloud. The ground is wet, as always. Patches of snow cling to the edges of the thatch roof. The fields beyond the village are still cloaked in mist, and a single raven perches on the fence post, watching you with silent judgment. The air smells of smoke, frost, and something sour you can't quite name. A neighbor waves with one hand, while the other holds a sloshing bucket. No one says good morning, just a nod, just an understanding. You're all waking into the same life, after all. The same sky, the same soil, the same weight. Today, like yesterday, there will be work. The tools are leaning against the cottage wall. Wooden rakes, patched baskets, a hoe with a cracked handle. You'll carry them out to the field soon. The reeve will be waiting, watching. The Lord's crops come first. Yours can wait, if there's time. But before all that, the animals must be tended, the water fetched, the hearth restoked, the bread started. It's not even sunrise yet, and already your back hurts. Welcome to the day. Shall we begin? The village has no clocks, no morning news, no calendars pinned to kitchen walls. Time is told by the light, by the tolling of distant church bells, and by the movements of animals who seem to know better than humans when the day has begun. But you don't need a clock to know what comes next. It's the same every morning, every season, every year. The rhythm is etched into your muscles, like the grooves in your hands. Morning chores, with no variation and no escape. You start with the water. There is no well in your home, no clean tap waiting to fill a mug with fresh, cold water. You carry 2 wooden buckets, both heavy even when empty, and begin the slow walk to the communal village well. The mud squelches under your feet, and your thin shoes do little to keep the damp out. In summer, the walk is dusty and hot. In winter, the ground is icy and slick, and the water is colder than bone. The well is shared by everyone. There's usually a queue, and there's always a conversation, even if it's clipped and tired. Someone mutters about a sick goat. Someone else spits and curses the reeve, the man responsible for overseeing the peasants on behalf of the Lord. You stay quiet. The reeve hears everything, eventually, and those who speak too freely often find themselves with the worst tasks. You lower the bucket into the well with a creaking rope and listen to the long echo as it drops, then splashes far below. You haul it up slowly, hand over hand. It's heavier than you'd like, but that's always the case. You fill your other bucket, balance both on a yoke across your shoulders, and start the walk back. If you're lucky, you don't spill too much. If you're unlucky, the handle breaks, and you lose your morning before it even starts. Back home, the fire has caught. A weak one, just enough to boil the porridge. You pour a little of the fresh water into a cracked pot and set it to warm. The oats are thin, stretched as far as they'll go. There's no salt today. You ran out last week. And there's no milk either, not unless the cow gives more than usual. But there's porridge. That's something. Before you eat, the animals come first. Always the animals. The pig is snorting now, impatient, nose to the door. The chickens need to be let out. Their feed scattered. If you're lucky enough to own a cow, it needs milking. And if you don't own one, perhaps you work for the man who does. And your job is to milk his. Either way, your hands will be cold and your back will ache before the sun climbs above the thatch roofs. The cow is stubborn this morning. She shifts and stamps and swats her tail at your face. You press your forehead against her flank and focus on the rhythm of the task. Squeeze and release, squeeze and release. The bucket fills slowly. You pray she doesn't kick it over. She has before. She will again. That's just the way of things. The chickens are louder. Their coop smells sharp and sour, and their claws click against the wooden slats. You gather eggs if there are any, and try not to get pecked. You clean out the droppings, scatter some grain, and shut the gate. A fox got in last month, left nothing but feathers. You've been more careful since then. You wipe your hands on your tunic, but it does little good. Dirt lives in your skin now, beneath your nails, in the creases around your knuckles. Even clean hands look dirty. Even scrubbed faces stay lined with soot. At last, breakfast, if you can call it that. A ladle of porridge, still steaming, is handed to each member of the family. There's not much conversation, just the sounds of chewing, of wooden spoons scraping against pottery bowls. There's no meat, no cheese, no butter, just oats, boiled until they've lost their shape and almost all their flavor. But they warm your stomach, and that's enough. You eat quickly. There's work to be done. The fields don't wait, and neither does the Lord. A village reeve appears, pacing between cottages. He doesn't knock. He doesn't have to. He calls out orders in a voice that's too loud for the hour. There's weeding to be done in the north field. The wheat must be checked, the barley harvested, the sheep driven to pasture. He lists tasks like a priest reciting sins. You nod. You don't argue. You go. Because the land you farm, it's not yours. Not really. You live under the manorial system, a structure older than memory, where almost everything, land, tools, harvests, lives, belongs to the local lord. Your cottage is borrowed, your fields are borrowed, even your time is borrowed. In return, you are allowed to work a small strip of land for your family's needs, but the majority of your labor goes to the Lord's estate. It's not a favor, it's a requirement. You owe him service, physical work for so many days each week, in addition to tithes, rents, and taxes. Today is one of those days. The reeve reminds you before you leave. The barley field is flooded near the edge, and the fence on the south side needs mending. You nod again, adjust the hoe over your shoulder, and begin walking. Others join you. A man with one eye and a crooked gait. A boy just tall enough to carry a rake. A woman carrying her youngest child on her hip, determined to work anyway. You walk together in silence, the tools clanking gently, the morning fog pressing against your skin. You reach the Lord's field. It's vast compared to yours, and better maintained. The soil here is softer, turned more often. The seeds were sown earlier in straighter rows. You wonder how much of it you'll ever eat yourself. Probably none. The best of the harvest goes to the Lord, then the church, then the market. Your share, if there is one, is whatever's left after everyone else is satisfied. You take your place along the row and begin to work. The soil is damp and clings to your fingers. You dig with the hoe, loosen the earth, pull weeds with calloused hands. You do this for hours, broken only by a short pause at midday. There's no clock to tell you when it's noon, but the angle of the sun, the growl in your stomach, and the ache in your arms all agree. It's time to stop. You find a patch of shade, sit on the grass, and eat whatever you brought. Maybe a chunk of rye bread, coarse and dry. Maybe a little onion, if you were lucky at the market. Maybe just more porridge, congealed and wrapped in cloth. There's no feast, just enough to quiet the hunger. And as you eat, you look out across the field. There are birds circling overhead. A hawk maybe, or just a crow. You can't tell from this distance. The clouds are thin today, and the sun is climbing higher, hotter. Your skin stings where it touches the light, but you keep working anyway, because the Lord expects it, because your family depends on it, because there is no other choice. The field stretches ahead, and your hands return to the soil. The sun is only halfway through the sky. The work has barely begun. The afternoon is long. Time in the field stretches in a way that makes the hours indistinct, like waves that lap endlessly against the shore. The sun climbs higher, and so does the ache in your spine. Your tunic clings to your back with sweat, and your feet, still damp from the morning dew, have begun to blister inside their worn leather shoes. The work doesn't slow. The earth doesn't care that your hands are raw. The weeds keep growing. The soil keeps hardening. The harvest keeps demanding. You are not alone. Dozens of other peasants work beside you, heads bowed, backs curved like question marks. No one speaks much. The only sound is the scrape of hoes against soil, the creak of wooden yokes, the occasional grunt or sigh when a root proves stubborn. A child cries in the distance. Not your child, but it could be. All cries sound the same when they're part of the village's rhythm. Most of your tools are made of wood or bone, some edged with iron if you're lucky. Iron is expensive, hard to come by unless the village blacksmith has had a good season. Your hoe is chipped at the edges. The handle is smooth from years of use. You've had to re-wrap it with scraps of cloth more than once. A spade leans nearby, its blade worn thin, its haft cracked but still useful. Everything you use is patched, borrowed, or passed down. Tools are not possessions, they are companions, and each has its own story of toil, of seasons, of blisters. You stop occasionally to drink water from a leather flask. The water is lukewarm now, warmed by the sun. There's a sour taste to it. Something picked up from the flask, or maybe from the well. You drink anyway. You have to. The day is still far from done, and thirst is a cruel companion when it sets in. Hunger you're used to. Hunger is familiar, like an old song. But thirst is sharper, more dangerous. It makes your thoughts scatter. It turns strength into sand. As the sun passes its peak, the field seems to bake. The air feels heavy, thick with dust and pollen. Your mouth is dry. Your arms are slow. But you keep moving. There's no alternative. If you rest too long, the reeve will notice. If you stop entirely, you'll fall behind. And if you fall behind, there's always someone ready to take your place. Someone hungrier, younger, or more desperate. Your stomach growls. The bread from earlier is long gone, and there won't be another proper meal until the day is finished. Maybe not even then. Supper is often just whatever is left. More porridge, a piece of hard cheese if there's any. Maybe boiled beans if they've kept well. On bad days, just scraps. On worse days, nothing. But food is never guaranteed, and neither is rest. The church bell rings in the distance. Not for you, not yet, but for someone else's Mass or Vespers. The sound floats over the fields, soft and solemn, and for a moment, it feels like a reminder that there is something beyond this toil. Something like peace. You close your eyes briefly and imagine a cooler place. A shaded grove, a breeze from the sea, a loaf of warm bread with honey, soft and sweet. But the vision fades with the bell's echo, and you're still here, bent over the soil. The land itself has moods. Some days it's loose and generous, easy to turn, yielding crops without resistance. Other days it's stubborn, packed tight like stone, hiding every root and rock until your wrists ache. You know every inch of your strip by heart. Where the soil is sandy, where it floods in rain, where the best carrots grow if you plant them just right. You're not a scientist, not in the way the world will later define it, but you know the earth. You know its secrets, its rhythms. You've learned them by heart, passed down from hands older than yours, repeated in action until they live inside your bones. You glance up at the sky, still bright, still no clouds. You can feel the heat pressing against your scalp, your shoulders. Your tunic clings to your skin, and the smell of sweat, dirt, and old wool surrounds you like a second skin. You reach up to wipe your brow, leaving a smear of soil across your forehead. It doesn't matter. You'll be dirty again within minutes. There are no breaks. Not really. If you stop, it's to stretch your back, shake out your hands, maybe relieve yourself behind a hedge. But there is no lunch hour. No concept of pausing simply because your body wants it. The day belongs to the land, and you serve the land, or rather, the Lord who owns it. Your thoughts drift as you work. Maybe you wonder what your children are doing. If they're old enough, they're working too, helping with the animals, gathering wood, or pulling weeds in the kitchen garden. If they're younger, they're under the eye of your spouse or a grandparent, swaddled in rags, playing in the dirt with sticks and stones. Childhood is brief here. By the time they can speak clearly, they're already learning their place in the rhythm of the village. Sometimes when you're bent over the fields for hours, your thoughts wander to strange places. You remember stories you were told as a child, tales of saints and devils, of creatures in the woods, of travelers who came from far-off places. You think of things you've never seen, a city, a castle, a cathedral, taller than any tree. You've heard of books, of people who can read and write. It sounds like magic. It is magic in a way, a kind of power you'll never touch. You don't resent it, not really. It just feels like another world, one that doesn't belong to you. The sun begins to sink finally. The shadows lengthen, and the light softens. This is the part of the day you live for. The quiet golden stretch when the worst is behind you. When your body is heavy, but the end is in sight. You pause, stand up straight for the first time in hours, and stretch until your shoulders crack. The reeve walks past, nodding at your progress. He doesn't say much. He never does. But a nod is better than a scowl. You take it as a small victory. You gather your tools, shake the dirt from them, sling the hoe across your shoulder once more. Others begin to gather as well. There is no whistle, no bell to mark the end of the workday. Just instinct, and the changing light, and the knowledge that you've done enough to avoid punishment, at least for today. You begin the walk home. The path is uneven, lined with stones and puddles. Your legs are stiff, your back throbs. But the village is ahead, and with it, the promise of food, warmth, and perhaps a moment of peace. Perhaps. But the day is not done yet. Not quite. The walk back from the fields is slow. Not because of distance, but because of exhaustion. Your legs feel like wood, your feet are sore, and every step carries the weight of a long day under the sun. The earth clings to your boots, thick and sticky from the damp furrows. The smell of soil and sweat trails behind you. Around you, others trudge along the same path, some in silence, others muttering to themselves or talking low about the day's yield, the reeve's temper, or the rumors of tax collectors returning early. It's not conversation so much as a trickle of shared exhaustion. No one laughs. Laughter is rare after a full day of labor. As you near the edge of the village, smoke from cooking fires begins to thread through the air. It smells of wood, boiled roots, and sometimes meat, though rarely. Mostly, it's the scent of turnips, leeks, and whatever else the season hasn't spoiled. In the distance, chickens cluck noisily as someone tosses scraps into the dirt yard, and a dog barks, though it's too tired to follow through. You hear the creak of old doors, the murmur of babies, and the rhythmic chop of someone cutting firewood. Your home isn't really yours. It belongs to the landowner, like everything else, but it's the only space in the world that's yours in any meaningful way. A small timber and wattle structure, daubed with clay and roofed with thatch, held together by hope and habit. It leans slightly to one side. The door doesn't close all the way. One wall has a draft that whistles in the winter. Still, it's where you return, every day, every season. And so, in a way, it is home. Inside, the light is dim. Windows are small, sometimes just holes covered with oiled parchment or old cloth. Candles are precious, used sparingly, so for now the only glow comes from the fire pit in the center of the room. It's where everything happens. Cooking, eating, warming, talking. The hearth is the heart of the house. Ashes scatter underfoot. The stones are warm from a fire that never truly goes out. You set down your tools, slowly, carefully. You flex your hands, fingers stiff and red from gripping wood all day. Someone hands you a bowl, your spouse, your child, your aging mother, and it's not full, but it's warm. That's enough. Dinner is a thick stew, more water than substance. Bits of cabbage float in it, maybe some beans or a stray onion, perhaps a scrap of bacon if a neighbor was generous, or a trap was lucky. Bread, if there is any left, is dry and coarse. You dip it into the stew until it softens, chewing slowly. There is no salt. That's too expensive. No herbs either, except the wild ones you managed to dry last summer. The meal is eaten quietly. Conversation isn't forbidden, but energy is spent elsewhere. You listen to the sound of chewing, the occasional cough, the groan of someone shifting on the wooden bench. Children eat last, or not at all if the pot is light. But tonight, there's just enough for everyone to have a little. A small mercy, a small success. There are no forks. Spoons, if you have them, are carved from wood. Most things are eaten, with fingers, hands stained with earth, even after a rinse from the bucket. Plates are rare. Often a shared wooden bowl does the job. Everyone eats from it in turn. If a guest were to arrive, unlikely but not impossible, they'd be offered the best piece, as custom dictates. Hospitality matters. even among the poor. Perhaps especially among the poor. After dinner, you tend the animals, if you have any. A goat or two, maybe a pig. Chickens are most common, scratching around the yard, laying eggs when the weather is right. They need to be closed in before nightfall. Foxes lurk in the woods. So do worse things, according to the stories. You check the coop, count the hens, throw them some stale crumbs, and latch the door. The pig grunts as you scrape the food scraps into the trough. It'll eat anything. You envy that simplicity. Water must be fetched if it hasn't been already. The well is shared by the village, and the path to it is worn smooth by generations of feet. You lower the bucket slowly, listening to the rope creak, feeling the cool splash below. Pulling it back up is harder than it should be. Everything is harder than it should be when your body is tired. But you do it. You always do it. Back inside, the children are asleep or pretending to be. They lie on straw mats or wool blankets, pressed close together for warmth. There's no bedroom, just one large space, shared by everyone. If you're lucky, you might have a curtain to divide the area, hung from a beam or tacked to the wall. Privacy is a luxury for the rich. For you, it's a memory that doesn't exist. The fire is fed again, just enough to keep the coals burning through the night. Wood is scarce. You ration it like bread. One more log, maybe two, and then you let it settle. The smoke curls upward, escaping through a hole in the roof. It blackens everything above. Your beams are stained dark, and soot clings to the walls. You've breathed it for years. Everyone has. You don't question it. You just cough sometimes and move on. You talk, maybe, before sleep. Quietly, softly, so the little ones aren't disturbed. You might speak of the weather, the harvest, the news from the reeve. Perhaps someone mentions a sickness spreading in the next village. Perhaps someone else saw a stranger on the road, heading toward the manor. These bits of talk carry weight. They are the threads that bind your world together. You don't have letters or books. You have stories, and stories keep you sane. Sometimes, if the day wasn't too hard, someone hums a tune. Not a song with words, just a melody passed down through time. Something heard at a fair or remembered from a wedding. It drifts through the room like smoke, light and slow, and for a moment the weariness recedes. The children breathe in rhythm. A dog thumps its tail in sleep. Outside, a breeze shakes the thatch. You stretch out on the mat. The ache in your back returns the moment you lie down. Sleep will come, eventually. It always does. Not because you're rested, but because your body demands it. Tomorrow will come quickly, and with it, the same routine. The same walk to the fields, the same hoe, the same aching hands. But for now, you have this moment. A belly not quite empty. A fire not yet dead. A roof that still holds. You think of nothing. You listen to the wind. And then, like a stone sinking into the earth, you sleep, and the village sleeps with you. Sleep in the medieval village is rarely uninterrupted. The wind through the thatch, the creak of old timbers, the cough of a sick child, the grunt of the pig outside. They all pierce the quiet darkness. But there's something else that hums beneath the surface of the night. It's not just the noise of animals or the chill creeping in through the drafty walls. It's a presence, a feeling shared by every soul in the village. The fear of the unknown, the weight of the spiritual world pressing down in the quiet hours when the fire has burned low and shadows stretch long across the earth. Religion isn't a part of life in the medieval village. It is life. It's not something you choose or question. It surrounds you, shapes you, watches you. You don't study theology. You live beneath it, like a thatch roof under storm clouds. Every birth, every death, every storm, and every sickness is understood through the lens of divine will. If the crops fail, someone has sinned. If a child dies, God is testing your faith. If lightning strikes the church steeple, the devil is nearby. You rise before dawn to pray, whether in your home or quietly along the muddy road to the fields. You make the sign of the cross. You mutter a simple prayer you've known since childhood. You don't speak Latin, few villagers do, but you hear it each week in Mass, in the chants of the priest, in the echoing syllables that feel sacred. even if their meaning escapes you. The priest says it's holy, and that is enough. Your church, a squat stone structure with a crooked bell and a dirt floor, stands at the edge of the village. It's always cold, always slightly damp. But to the villagers, it is the gateway between this world and the next. You go there not just on Sundays, but for every milestone, baptisms, marriages, burials. The church marks the rhythm of your life. The priest is the only man in the village who can read, the only one with books, the only one who's spoken to a bishop. He wears robes and speaks of eternity with calm certainty. You respect him. You fear him too. He holds the keys to your soul's fate. He speaks often of sin, original sin, mortal sin, venial sin. It's not always clear what they mean, but you know one thing. Sin leads to punishment. You live each day aware that God is watching not only your deeds, but your thoughts. Pride, envy, lust, even thinking wrongly can mark your soul. And hell is not abstract. It's not a metaphor. It's real. It's beneath your feet, and it waits. The priest has described it in detail. Burning fires, screaming souls, eternal pain. You've seen the paintings, the carvings, the stained glass windows, demons with claws and fangs, bodies twisted in agony. You know people who believe they've seen it in their dreams. Heaven, by contrast, feels distant, lovely, yes, a place of peace, of song, of reunion with lost loved ones, but also unreachable, not for people like you. You are a poor farmer. You don't give large donations. You don't have relics. You don't pay for indulgences. You try to do good, but good isn't always clear. And even if you confess, even if you pray, you never know for sure. Doubt is your shadow. It walks with you. Superstition lives alongside faith. The priest may warn against it, but the villagers don't separate them. You hang herbs above the door to keep evil spirits out. You scatter salt at thresholds. You whisper charms over a sick child's forehead, hoping to drive away the fever demon. You touch iron when you speak of death, spit over your shoulder to ward off a curse and avoid certain trees thought to be sacred or haunted. If someone in the village falls ill unexpectedly, people begin to whisper. Perhaps a witch lives nearby. Perhaps someone made an offering to the wrong spirit. Perhaps the dead are restless. You believe in saints, but also in ghosts. You honor Christ, but you fear the fair folk. There's a sacred well near the edge of the woods, said to heal the sick if you offer it a ribbon. No one talks about it openly, but most have gone there, at least once. There's a tree near the crossroads that no one cuts, for it's said a man was hanged there unjustly, and his spirit lingers. You never walk by it alone after dark. Pilgrimages are spoken of with awe. To travel to a shrine, to see a relic. It's a dream, a hope, a kind of insurance for your soul. Most villagers will never go. It's too far, too costly, too dangerous. But a neighbour once walked to Canterbury, and when he returned, even the priest treated him with more respect. He brought back a sliver of bone said to belong to a saint. Whether it truly was or not, no one questioned. They just touched it and whispered prayers. It made them feel closer to salvation. Confession is both a relief and a burden. You kneel in the dim church, whisper your wrongs, stealing eggs, cursing the reeve, coveting a neighbour's wife. And the priest listens without expression. Then he tells you what to do. A certain number of prayers, a fast, maybe an offering. You leave feeling lighter, but not clean. Not really. You still carry doubt. What if you forgot a sin? What if you didn't feel sorry enough? What if God knows your heart better than you do? The calendar is filled with holy days, feasts, fasts, saints' days. These are the markers of time. You don't know the date, but you know when it's Michaelmas. You know when Lent begins. You know the rhythm of the year by its sacred moments. These days bring moments of rest, sometimes a special meal, sometimes a festival. They are rare, cherished, and filled with a strange mix of joy and anxiety. Joy, because you might dance or eat something sweet. Anxiety, because you must behave properly. Even celebration has rules. Always rules. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, When the wind howls and the fire is nearly out, you wake with a start. You don't know why. Maybe a noise. Maybe a dream. You lie there, listening to the breath of your children, the soft whimper of a dog, and you wonder, have I done enough? Am I good? Will I be judged kindly? The darkness feels heavier then. Not just the absence of light, but the weight of eternity pressing down through the roof. You close your eyes. You say a prayer, soft and shaky. Perhaps to God. Perhaps to Mary. Perhaps to no one in particular. Just a hope whispered into the straw-filled air. That's what you have. Not certainty. Just hope. Hope that tomorrow the crops will grow, that your children will live, that your soul, so small and quiet, will be heard. That grace, whatever it is, however it comes, will find you, and slowly, as the cold settles and your breath evens out, you slip back into sleep, carrying your fears with you like a cloak. Wrapped in faith, soaked in doubt, dreaming of heaven just beyond the clouds. Waking up hungry is a common experience for a medieval peasant, but so is going to sleep that way. Food is not just a matter of appetite, it is a constant question of survival. The line between nourishment and starvation runs through every season, every crop, and every unpredictable twist of weather. There are no supermarkets, no pantries filled with options. There is only what you've grown, what your Lord hasn't taken, and what nature, on a good day, might offer without asking too much in return. Breakfast is not really a meal. If you're lucky, you'll get a small hunk of yesterday's bread. Coarse, dark, heavy with bran and grit. Bread made from rye, barley, or oats. Wheat is a luxury crop, mostly grown for the gentry. You chew the dense crust slowly, washing it down with ale. Not because you're eager for a buzz, but because water is unreliable, often muddy, sometimes dangerous. Ale is boiled, brewed, and far safer than the nearest stream. Even the children drink it. Not strong, but strong enough to take the edge off the cold and the hunger. If you're one of the fortunate peasants who keeps a garden, you may add a bit of onion or cabbage. Maybe some beans or leeks pulled from the soil outside your cottage. But there's no butter, no jam, no sugar. Sweetness is a stranger. Salt is expensive and scarce. Meat, a rare visitor, usually only seen during feast days or through the scraps left behind by nobility. Bones, fat, gristle, anything that can be boiled into broth. Lunch, if it exists, is not much different. Maybe a pottage, a kind of stew made from whatever is available. Grain, roots, a bit of green. If someone traded well at the market or caught a rabbit in the woods without being seen by the lords. Forester, there might be a hint of meat in the pot, but poaching is dangerous. It's illegal. The forests belong to the Lord, not the people. A single snare could cost you your hand or worse, so you learn to forage carefully. Mushrooms, nettles, berries, nuts, gifts from nature that ask nothing but attentiveness and luck. Every bite is seasonal. There are no tomatoes, no potatoes, no corn. Those haven't yet arrived from the New World. You know apples in the fall, pickled turnips in the winter, and spring greens when the frost finally breaks. In summer, the abundance of beans, peas, and grains briefly lifts the weight of scarcity, but only if the weather has been kind and the rats have stayed away. Dinners are humble, quiet affairs. Families gather around a low fire, ladling out portions with wooden spoons from a single pot. Flatbread, often hard and stale, is used as a plate, absorbing broth and scraps. You eat with your hands, or with a shared knife if you're lucky enough to own one. Food is communal. There's no such thing as a private meal. Everyone eats together, or no one eats at all. Fasting is not always religious. Sometimes it's simply a result of bad luck. A spoiled barrel of grain, a blight on the crops, an unexpected guest, like an early frost or a late hailstorm. But the church mandates fast days too, dozens of them. During Lent, Advent, and on Fridays, meat is forbidden. You learn to stretch pottage thinner, to value fish when you can get it. Dried fish, salted herring, or eels from the nearest stream. These fasts aren't suggestions, they're obligations. To disobey is to sin. To sin is to risk your soul. Feast days, by contrast, are sacred celebrations. There are moments in the year when the grinding wheel of labor slows just enough to allow a taste of joy. On saints' days, harvest festivals, or holy days like Easter and Christmas, the entire village gathers. The Lord might distribute a portion of meat. There may be roasted goose, mutton, or pig. Ale flows more freely. Bread is white, soft, and rich. You might even see honey, nuts, cakes, or pies. The kind of food that reminds you what flavor really is. But those days are rare. Most of your life is spent in quiet chewing, in swallowing what is plain and barely satisfying. Hunger is not a feeling that comes and goes. It's a presence that lingers. A dull ache beneath your ribs. A fatigue behind your eyes. Some seasons it's a whisper, others it's a roar. Storage is a daily worry. You dry beans, you hang herbs, you pickle vegetables when you can. Grains are stored in sacks, in wooden chests, in clay jars tucked against the wall of your cottage. Rats are always a threat. So are mold, damp, and time. There's no refrigeration, only cleverness and prayer. If food spoils, you eat it anyway and hope for the best. You've seen people waste nothing, not even sour milk or spoiled meat. Stomachs grow strong, or they give out. Cooking is a smoky, slow process. There are no stoves, just an open hearth, a fire constantly tended with care. You hang pots from iron hooks. You bake in communal ovens if your village has one, or on hot stones, or beneath coals. The smoke clings to everything, your clothes, your hair, your lungs. But without fire, there is no life, no heat, no food, no safety from the dark. Children learn early to stir the pot, to grind grain, to pluck feathers from chickens. Everyone has a role. Food preparation is work, and work is constant. You don't snack. You don't graze. You eat when the work allows it, when the land permits it, when the gods have not withheld it. Malnutrition is not a concept to a medieval peasant. It is simply the state of being. You've seen children with thin limbs and swollen bellies. You've watched loved ones age too fast, hair graying in their 20s, teeth gone by 30. You know the look of a body broken by hunger. You see it in the mirror sometimes. Still, you are grateful. You have a field. You have a hearth. You have a pot with something in it. That alone makes you luckier than many. You've heard stories of entire villages wasting away during harsh winters, of travelers found frozen beside empty carts, of spring rains that never came and wells that ran dry. The Lord's Prayer includes a line you whisper with quiet intensity. Give us this day our daily bread. You don't say it lightly. You mean it. You say it every day with the kind of sincerity only true need can teach. And so each day you eat what you can. You thank God for it. You save the crusts. You scrape the pot. You chew slowly. Not because you savor the taste, but because you never know when the next meal might come. Health for the medieval peasant is not the absence of illness. It's a daily negotiation with the forces that seek to undo the body. Hunger, cold, filth, and fate. There are no hospitals as you know them, no trained physicians waiting in quiet clinics. Instead, there are remedies passed down through whispers, beliefs older than memory, and prayers offered with desperate hope. To fall ill is not a brief inconvenience. It is a threat that could claim your life slowly or all at once. You wake one morning with a fever. You shiver though it is not cold. Your mouth is dry, your muscles ache, your head is heavy. You can't stop coughing. There is no thermometer to measure how high your fever runs, no medicine to ease the pounding in your skull. You stay home if you're lucky. But staying home means not working, and not working means not eating. So many choose to work anyway, coughing over fields, sweating into bread dough, shaking from chills while hauling wood. What healing there is comes from the women of the village. The wise woman, the midwife, the herbalist. She is not formally trained, but she knows which roots reduce fever, which herbs numb pain, and which leaves to steep into bitter teas that make you sweat out the sickness. Willow bark for headaches, mint for digestion, garlic for just about everything. She may tell you to rest, to drink warm ale, to fast for a day. or she may send you to the priest if she senses the illness is not of the body, but of the soul. Because sometimes sickness is believed to come not from within, but from without. You've heard it said that disease is a punishment for sin, for pride, for disobedience. Some say a sick child is a test of the mother's faith. Others believe evil spirits ride the air, entering the lungs of the impure. You sleep with a sprig of rue beneath your pillow. You wear a pouch of herbs around your neck. You hang a wooden cross above the door. You do not know if these things work, but you do them anyway, because doing nothing feels like surrender. Leeches are used by those who follow the more learned traditions. They believe sickness comes from imbalances. Too much blood, too much bile, not enough phlegm. So they bleed you. They cut your skin or place sucking creatures against your limbs and hope the humors realign. It doesn't always help. Sometimes it kills, but it is respected, even trusted, because it is ancient. The church also offers healing, or at least comfort. You kneel in a cold stone chapel and confess your sins, hoping the illness will hear your honesty and leave your body. The priest may anoint you with oil. He may chant prayers in Latin, words you don't understand but believe in deeply. The ritual calms you, if not your fever. And sometimes that is enough. When a plague comes, everything changes. The village becomes a place of silence. People vanish into their homes. Doors are marked. Carts carry bodies down the road, and the bell tolls again and again. The smell of sickness fills the air. Rot, sweat, despair. The healthy avoid the sick, sometimes even their own kin. Mothers leave food at the doors of their children. Husbands sleep outside barns while their wives cough inside. The fear is greater than grief. The Black Death. It is a phrase that hangs like fog over the memories of those who lived through it. You may not know the name, but you remember the pain. Whole families gone in days. Entire villages emptied. You saw the boils. You heard the cries. You learned not to look too closely, because seeing too much was a kind of contagion too. When a child falls ill, the entire family prays. Infant mortality is so common that many children are not named until weeks after birth. Midwives do their best with herbal poultices and calming words, but if the child does not feed, if the fever does not break, there is little they can do. You have heard mothers wail in the dark, cradling still bundles in the night. The earth in the churchyard is soft from so many tiny graves. Yet even with all this, the peasant does not live in constant despair. Resilience is a learned skill. You endure because you must. The rhythms of life, planting, harvesting, feasting, fasting, keep you going. There are good years, times when the barley grows tall and the children stay well, times when the herbal remedies seem to work, when the cows don't fall ill, when the ale is strong and laughter returns to the firelit evenings. You do not have doctors, but you have knowledge, generations of it. You know which stream is cleaner. You know how to boil nettles to make a tonic. You know that garlic rubbed on the chest eases a cough, even if it only works through the warmth of belief. You know the difference between a fever that will pass and one that will take. You don't need a degree to sense death in the room. You smell it. You feel it in the hush that falls when someone stops breathing. There is no retirement. You work until your body refuses. Old age, when it comes, is rare and respected. The old ones are listened to, not just because they've lived long, but because they've survived what others didn't. They are the keepers of memories, of remedies, of stories. You hope to be one of them, to be a person who remembers things, who teaches others what the bark is for, how to tie the poultice, when to rest and when to fight. And through it all, there is the church. Saints are prayed to, Saint Sebastian for plague, Saint Apollonia for toothaches, Saint Roche for open wounds. Their images hang in the chapel. Their names are whispered beside beds. Their relics, if your village is lucky enough to have one, are kissed, touched, or carried in procession. You do not know if the saints can hear you, but you speak to them anyway. Because when the healer's herbs fail, and the priest's oil fades, and the leeches leave you weaker than before, sometimes all you have left is hope. Cleanliness is limited. Baths are rare. You wash in cold water, scrub with ashes or sand. If you're fortunate, you bathe in the river. But even that can carry risk. Soap is precious. Lice are common. Sores linger. Wounds fester. You bandage them with linen strips. Change them when you can. You've seen wounds go black. You've watched healthy men die from a splintered foot, but you keep going. Because the land doesn't stop for illness. The cows don't milk themselves. The grain doesn't wait for you to feel better. So you rise, day after day, with the pain, through the fever, dragging your body toward the fields, whispering a prayer beneath your breath. You are not healthy, but you are alive. And in this world, that is more than enough. For most days in the life of a medieval peasant, life is simple, repetitive, and hard. But every now and then, a crack opens in the wall of toil, and something unexpected slips through. Celebration. These moments, whether markets, holy days, or humble fairs, are brief, but they shine with a glow that can make the rest of the year seem almost tolerable. You live for these days, not because they are extravagant, but because they remind you that there is more to life than fields and hunger. The first sign of a market day is sound. Bells from the church tower ring with a rhythm that doesn't mean mass or mourning. The road fills early, while the fog still clings low, with the clop of hooves and the grind of cartwheels. People from neighbouring villages walk for miles, their feet calloused, their baskets empty and hopeful. You know the rhythm well. You've done it many times. You gather your few goods, eggs, onions, maybe a bundle of wool or firewood, and join the stream heading toward the market square. The market is not luxurious, but it is alive. There are no supermarkets, no currency exchanges, no digital scales. Instead, goods are bartered, traded, shouted about, and haggled over with voices hoarse from the cold. A sack of oats for a jug of ale, a chicken for 3 rounds of cheese, and if you don't have much, perhaps a little help with someone's ox in exchange for a slab of smoked meat. You're there not just to trade, but to listen. Gossip, news from faraway cities, rumours of wars or royal marriages drift through the market like smoke. No printing presses, no newspapers. The market is your window into the world beyond your field. You hear a travelling merchant speak of strange things, spices from the east, salt caravans, coloured glass from Venice. You do not fully believe him, but it doesn't matter. The stories themselves are worth the price of attention. Sometimes there's a juggler, or a fiddler, or a puppet show for the children, who scream with delight at wooden devils and dancing goats. Someone walks the square on stilts, making the little ones laugh and the chickens nervous. A baker sells warm bread, rich with spices you rarely taste. You bite into it slowly, savouring each chew like it might be the last time. Because for you, it might be months before such a taste returns. And then there are the feast days, holy days, sacred and scattered across the calendar like lanterns in the dark. Some mark the birth of a saint, others celebrate the harvest. Many more are dedicated to the Virgin Mary or Christ himself. But, no matter the reason, they all offer the same treasured gift: a pause. On these days, you are not expected to work the fields. Even the Lord gives you space, if only briefly. The church fills with the smell of incense, the drone of Latin hymns, and the shimmer of candlelight. You may not understand the words, but the ritual washes over you like warm water. You kneel, you stand, you cross yourself, and murmur your own prayers beneath the breath of the priest. After the service, the village transforms. Simple clothes are brushed clean, faces are washed. A communal pot simmers with whatever people could spare. Beans, root vegetables, maybe a little meat if the hunt was good. Ale flows, bread is shared, children run, their laughter uninhibited. And for a few short hours, you remember how it feels to smile without effort. On rare occasions, there's music, Someone has a pipe or a lute, and the sound loops through the air like birdsong. Old men clap their hands. Women spin in circles, their skirts catching wind. You may not dance. You're too tired or too sore. But watching is enough, because the joy is infectious, and joy, like hunger, spreads quickly when shared. Not all feasts are joyful. Some are solemn, days of fasting and penitence, where no meat is eaten, and the sky itself seems grey with memory. Lent is long and lean. Ash. Wednesday is cold and quiet, but even in these somber observances, there is structure, a kind of sacred rhythm. And sometimes, the absence of food makes its eventual return feel like a blessing, not a routine. The great harvest festivals are your favourites. Lammas in August, Michaelmas in September. They mark survival. They remind you that you've made it. Another cycle through hunger and frost. The barns are full, the granary sealed, and for once, you can exhale without fear. The priest blesses the grain. The children chase chickens. And you, just for a moment, believe that perhaps this winter will not be so cruel. There are other forms of celebration, though not all are church-sanctioned. Weddings, for instance, are equal parts joy and exhaustion. You've seen 3 in one summer. Each begins with ceremony and ends with sore feet and spilled ale. The bride wears flowers in her hair. The groom looks too young and too proud. People dance. They feast. They joke about fertility and sing crude songs under the stars. Even the priest seems to laugh more than usual. But the best part of the wedding isn't the wine or the bread. It's the reminder that life goes on. That even in a world where death waits behind every corner, love still sprouts like a stubborn weed through cracked stone. Death itself can also bring a kind of gathering. A funeral, somber and thick with incense, brings the village together. You wear black, or your best tunic if black is too dear. You walk the coffin to the grave. You sing the hymns, or at least hum them. And afterward, if the family has means, there's a meal. Silent at first, but soon filled with stories. Laughter returns, not to mock the dead, but to honor them. Because memory, like bread, is meant to be shared. And sometimes, in your dreams, you recall the traveling fairs. They're rare. Maybe once in a decade. A blur of color, strange accents, and music that doesn't sound like anything from your village. Men who walk on ropes. Women who swallow fire. Pigs that dance on command. You wake with the memory and wonder if it was real. You think it was. Or maybe it was just something someone once described under a full moon after too much ale. But whether imagined or remembered, those flashes of joy, those gatherings of color and sound, those shared moments of wonder, they stay with you. They are the warmth you carry into the frost, the stories you tell when the fire burns low, the reasons you endure another season of cold feet and blistered palms, because even the hardest life needs its brightness. And even a medieval peasant, battered and bowed, deserves to remember that there is more to this world than suffering. That sometimes, even in a life ruled by toil, the market opens. The fiddle plays, the bread is warm, and for a fleeting hour, the weight lifts. You laugh, you breathe, you live. In the medieval world, freedom is not a birthright. It is a rumor. A word that floats on the wind, whispered by those who've heard of far-off cities, or rare letters of manumission, but never held it in their calloused hands. For the peasant, life is a web of obligations, tight, tangled, and nearly impossible to escape. You are not your own. You belong in part to the land and in part to someone else entirely. Your name may be known, but it is not enough to protect you. What defines you more clearly than your given name is your status. You are a villain, a serf, a cotar, or a boarder. These are not just labels. They are cages, determining everything. From how many days you must labor for your lord, to whether you are allowed to marry someone from the next village. And you did not choose this. You were born into it, like your father before you, and your father's father before him. The manor is your universe, not the great stone house where the Lord sleeps, but the entire estate, the fields, the woods, the mills, the village. It is your world, and in this world, the Lord is not a distant figurehead. He is your ruler, your judge, your landlord, and sometimes your enemy. You do not meet him often. His bailiff or reeve handles the daily matters, but his shadow stretches far. When you plough a field, you know which rows belong to you, and which must be left for him. When your pig roots in the wrong corner of the wood, you know a fine may follow. You are expected to give labor 2 or 3 days a week, sometimes more during harvest. You are also expected to give goods, a portion of your grain, a chicken at Easter, a few pence if coin is demanded. These are called dues, and they are non-negotiable. You might resent them, but you do not refuse them, because refusal is rebellion, and rebellion is crushed. Justice is not blind here. It sees your status, your wealth, your usefulness. If a dispute arises over land, over livestock, over insult, it is not settled in a court of law as you might imagine. It is brought to the manorial court, where your neighbors sit in judgment and the Lord's steward guides the outcome. The punishments vary. A fine, a penance, public humiliation, rarely imprisonment, rarer still, execution. But even when justice is light, it is never equal. A free tenant may speak with more confidence than you. A wealthy peasant may pay his way out of trouble. You, however, must weigh every word. Marriage is not a private affair. If you wish to marry someone outside your manor, you must seek permission. This isn't about romance, it's about labor. The Lord cannot afford to lose a useful worker to another estate. If you marry without approval, you may be fined. If you flee, you may be chased down. The reeve knows your name. He knows where your parents live. He will come for you. Owning land is a dream. Most peasants do not own. They hold. A narrow strip of field here, a garden patch there, granted in exchange for service. You cannot sell it. You cannot pass it on freely. When you die, your heir must pay a fine to claim it. If your family cannot pay, the land returns to the Lord. The cycle begins again. And yet, in spite of this, you carve out agency where you can. You negotiate. You trade labor with your neighbor. You work an extra day to keep your oxen. You offer your daughter in marriage to forge a stronger tie. It is not freedom, but it is survival. Taxes, too, arrive without invitation. A royal tax, a church tithe, a new levy to fund a war in a place you'll never see. A shilling here, a few pence there. You don't have coin. Most peasants trade in goods or services. But when the king wants silver, you must find it. You may sell a sheep. You may borrow from a cousin. You may go hungry. The king does not care how you find it, only that you do. The church is not just your place of worship. It is your other master. The priest may be kind, but the church as an institution demands obedience. A tenth of your income, called the tithe, belongs to God. Not because you agreed, but because it has always been so. And while the priest offers you sacraments and speaks of heaven, he also keeps a careful record of who gives what. A poor giver risks public shame, or worse, spiritual consequences. When famine strikes, when the plague returns, when the harvest fails, the law does not loosen. Your obligations remain. Your dues are still expected. The wheel turns, even if you are too weak to push it. But not all is without recourse. Occasionally, rarely, a peasant buys freedom. Perhaps through years of saving. Perhaps through bravery in battle. Perhaps because a kind lord, struck by piety or guilt, grants it. Such moments become legend. The freedman is watched with suspicion. He walks differently, he speaks more boldly. Some admire him, others whisper. More often, freedom comes through escape. You hear of towns where runaway serfs can blend in. Places where, if you live undetected for a year and a day, you may be declared free. These stories drift through the tavern like smoke. They are dangerous stories, but they are intoxicating. You imagine it sometimes, a life where you answer to no one. where the grain you sow is yours alone. But then you look at your hands, at your children, at the house your grandfather built, and you know the cost is too high, the risk too great. So you stay, not because you love your bondage, but because it is familiar, and because it's all you've ever known. Still, the bonds shift over time. As years pass, some lords grow less strict. Some villages form associations, early guilds, common fields, shared tools. The manorial system softens. The Black Death changes things. So many die that labor becomes rare, and peasants gain leverage. Wages rise, rules bend. And for a brief, flickering moment, you feel the edge of freedom press against your skin. But then the laws are rewritten. The statute of laborers is passed. Wages are frozen. Peasants who ask for more are branded as traitors. The old balance reasserts itself. Your hope is not extinguished, just buried again beneath soil and stone, yet you endure. Not because you are obedient, but because you are strong. You build your world with borrowed tools and broken promises. You laugh in defiance. You marry with joy. You name your children with hope. And you walk your narrow path, knowing that though the land is not yours, the footsteps are. And that, for now, is enough, because even if the law binds you, it cannot fully own your will. And in a world where freedom is myth, your dignity becomes its own quiet rebellion. In your world, time does not tick by in minutes or hours. There are no clocks in your home, no schedules carved into neat little rectangles on a wall. Your time is measured in something more ancient, more eternal. The turn of the seasons, the tilt of the sun, the way the wind shifts when winter is coming. You don't know what year it is, not in numbers, but you know when the first frost is due. You know the scent of summer in retreat and the look of clouds before a storm. You know when to sow, when to reap, when to pray, and when to brace for cold. The medieval peasant's calendar is a wheel, not a line. It rolls through the same rituals every year, each season bringing its own labors, its own trials. And through it all, your life is stitched into the fabric of that wheel. Inseparable, predictable, inescapable. Spring is not gentle. It does not arrive with soft pastels and sweet songs. It bursts in with mud, swollen rivers, aching backs, and the urgency of planting. You've spent the winter half-starved, surviving on dried beans and barley bread, counting how many sacks are left. Now the ground softens, and it's time to gamble again. You scatter seeds in furrows ploughed by aching arms or behind slow oxen if your village is lucky enough to own them. Wheat, barley, rye, each tiny grain a whisper of hope. Spring also brings rain, too much or too little. Either way, the stakes are your survival. You pray for the right balance. You bless your tools. You glance toward the sky more often than toward your plate. And when the first green shoots appear, you breathe a little easier, even though your belly still groans. Summer is labor without pause. The days stretch long, the sun rising early and refusing to set. It beats down on your neck as you weed, hoe, herd, and mend. The fields are demanding now. The crops are fragile. Pests come. Disease too. A blight can destroy your work in days. Locusts have no mercy. You chase crows with shouted threats and waving arms, as if your voice could stop the hunger of nature. But summer also brings warmth to your bones and the briefest moments of light-heartedness. Children play barefoot in dust, chasing dogs and each other. The village well runs full. The days are long enough to feel stretched, and sometimes, when the wind cools in the evening, you let yourself smile, just a little. Midsummer is marked with feasts and bonfires. You dance not because you are rested, but because the priest said the saint's day is holy, and the beer was brewed 2 weeks ago and must be drunk. You twirl with tired joy. You sing badly. For a moment, the wheel feels generous, but it turns again. Autumn is harvest, and harvest is pressure. Your life, your winter, your next spring, all of it depends on how well you reap. Scythes move through grain like slow waves. Baskets fill with apples, pears, roots, and herbs. You work from dawn until dark. Everyone does. Children, elders, the lame and the limping. No one is spared. Every stalk of wheat is survival. There is pride in a full granary. There is terror in an empty one. You measure your harvest in more than weight. You count it in nights without hunger, in stew pots that will last, in the quiet confidence of having enough. But even a good harvest can be stolen by rats, ruined by mold, or taxed away by the Lord. And autumn is when the church reminds you of death. All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day. These are not holidays. They are warnings. The veil is thin, says the priest. Light a candle, say a prayer, remember the dead, because soon you may join them. Then comes winter, and winter is your enemy. It arrives slowly at first. A frost here, a quiet hush on the fields. Then it clamps down like a vice. The trees go bare, the roads freeze. The world turns grey and hard and quiet. You retreat into your hovel. The hearth is your only light, your only warmth. Wood is precious. You ration it. Some nights, you go to sleep fully clothed, covered in whatever you can find, breath fogging in the dark. There is no work in the fields, so you mend tools, patch clothes, tell stories. The world shrinks to the size of your hut. You chew old bread and dried fruit if you have it. Sometimes you chew nothing. Winter brings illness. Coughs turn to fevers. Lice return in force. The child who looked fine yesterday is suddenly pale and still. There are no doctors. The healer shrugs and offers a poultice. You pray harder. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Hunger makes people quiet, short-tempered, prayerful. You dream of summer like it was another life. You curse your past self for wasting grain. You wonder how much longer you can last. And yet, you do. Because the wheel turns again. Candlemas comes, and the priest says spring is near. You look for buds on trees, feel the wind shifting, and when the first crocus blooms near the chapel wall, it feels like a miracle. You survived, barely, again, but the calendar does not forgive. There are no sabbaticals, no time off, no unexpected windfalls. One season's failure ripples forward. If you harvest poorly, next spring's planting is thinner. If you catch illness in winter, you labor slower. In summer, time does not stop. It does not even pause. It moves in circles and you must run just to keep from falling behind. Time isn't fair. You know that. You've watched a good man fall off a roof and die. You've seen a woman survive 10 childbirths only to starve in a wet spring. You've seen the Lord's steward laugh while counting grain you grew and cannot keep. But fairness was never promised. Time in the village is also communal. One man's failure is everyone's burden. If your cow dies, your neighbor might help. If your harvest fails, the whole village tightens belts. Because when one falls behind, everyone feels it. The rhythm must be kept. The wheel must turn. It is the only order you know. There are no personal goals, no career paths. You do not aim for promotions. Your reward is survival, a full stomach, maybe a night without pain. And for your children, the same. You hope they are strong. That's all. You hope they last. If they do, they too will ride this wheel, year after year, until the day the cold no longer lifts and the dawn no longer comes. And yet, for all its brutality, the calendar has comfort. It is known, reliable. The sun always rises. The snow always melts. Lent always comes before Easter. You don't control time, but at least you understand it. You are not drifting. You are rooted, not in hours and minutes, but in rhythm and repetition, in wheat and rain and firewood, in saints and seasons. And when you are old, if you make it that far, you will sit by the hearth and tell a child that spring begins when the wind shifts, when the crows call louder, when the mud returns. Not because you read it in a book, but because you lived it. Again and again, that is your calendar, that is your time, and it never stops turning. You rise each day under the weight of the sun and the soil, but above it all, you live under the rule of fear. Not just fear of hunger or sickness or death. You live in fear of the law, of men with power, of lords and reeves and judges who can shape your life with a nod or a frown. Fear is woven into your world like straw into a thatch roof, always present, always threatening to collapse when you least expect it. The law, you're told, is just. It is divine. It is the order that keeps chaos at bay. But it rarely feels fair. It feels like a hammer hanging above your head, and sometimes it falls for no reason you can understand. Take theft. You might not even call it theft. A crust of bread lifted from a cart, a bit of grain scooped from a neighbor's sack, a chicken taken in the night when your child hasn't eaten in 2 days. To you, it's survival. To the law, it's a crime. And crimes have consequences. If you are caught, if someone sees or suspects or simply doesn't like you, justice is swift and public. You are dragged before the manorial court, which is held under the watchful eye of the Lord's steward, sometimes in the hall, sometimes under a tree in the center of the village. You are not innocent until proven guilty. You are guilty until someone decides otherwise. You stand trembling before your neighbors. They whisper. They guess. They nod or shake their heads. The reeve might speak for you or against you. The steward might listen. Or not. Your fate lies not in evidence or fairness, but in mood, reputation, and the Lord's favor. Punishments vary, but none are pleasant. A beating, swift, brutal, and public, is common. The whip is leather, sometimes knotted, and it cracks like thunder across your back. You scream, not to garner sympathy, but because you can't help it. Your shirt is torn. Your skin splits. Blood runs. Then it's over, and you're left gasping in the dirt. Your shame as loud as the birds in the trees. If the crime is worse or repeated, the stocks await. Wooden boards clamp around your ankles or wrists, and you are left in the village square for hours, maybe days. Rain soaks you. Sun burns you. Children mock you. Neighbors pass without speaking. Some throw scraps, others throw dung. The point is not just punishment, it's humiliation. A reminder to everyone, don't step out of line. There are darker penalties too. A thief might lose an ear. A liar might be branded. A poacher might be imprisoned, though jails are rare and wretched. And for serious offences, murder, arson, blasphemy, there is death. Hanging, usually. Sometimes, beheading. Always a crowd. Always silence just before the final moment. The body might hang for days, a warning swaying in the wind. But most crimes aren't grand. They're petty. A boundary crossed. A chicken gone missing. An insult muttered. A debt unpaid. And still, the consequences ripple. You could lose your land, your tools, your standing, your peace. And it doesn't take much. One accusation, one grudge, one unlucky moment. Justice is not blind. It has eyes, and those eyes belong to the Lord or his men. If you are poor, and you are not protected by the law. You are pinned beneath it. The court fines you for using common pasture too early, for gathering firewood where you shouldn't, for letting your pig root too close to the manor's orchard. And if you can't pay, the reeve comes with his ledger and his list. A chicken then, or a sack of barley, or your only good cloak. Even innocence is no shield. If you live near someone who causes trouble, suspicion stains you. If you look different, or speak strangely, or seem too clever, people talk. And talk becomes truth when heard by the wrong ears. There are no appeals, no lawyers, just the weight of judgment, falling hard and fast. And then there are the taxes. Always the taxes. You do not understand them. No one does. 1 year, you owe 1/10 of your barley. The next, the tithe changes. Now it's wool, or eggs, or coin, though you rarely have any. The church demands its share. The Lord demands more. The king, far, away, invisible, sends word through scribes and sheriffs. A new levy, a new toll, a new tax for a war you'll never see. You grumble, but you pay, or try to. Sometimes a tax collector comes. Fat, well-dressed, eyes hard as flint. He asks questions, measures your field, counts your sheep, writes things down in a book you cannot read. He leaves with your silver, if you have any, or with the promise of goods to come. He never smiles. He never returns what he takes. You ask the reeve why the tax is so high this year. He shrugs. He doesn't know, or won't say. You ask the priest. He talks about duty, about rendering unto Caesar. You ask your wife. She sighs and counts what little you have left. Sometimes you pay with labor. You dig ditches, mend fences, cart stones. Your time becomes currency, days lost to someone else's needs. Other times it's grain or cloth or livestock. And still, the taxes grow. The fear is not just of punishment, it's of power. The kind you can't touch or reason with. The kind that wears rings and reads Latin and decides how much you owe without asking what you have. The kind that sends you to the stocks not because you stole, but because someone said you did. And what can you do? You can't flee. You can't fight. You can only obey. Keep your head down. Speak softly. Give what you can and hope they don't ask for more. Justice, in your world, is not about right and wrong. It's about order, about keeping peasants in line, about reminding you day after day that you are not in charge, not of your land, not of your labor, and certainly not of your life. So you harvest your grain and pray your neighbor doesn't envy it. You tend your sheep and hope none wander into the Lord's forest. You speak carefully, live plainly, and try not to draw attention, because attention leads to judgment, and judgment leads to pain, and you have enough of that already. You do not dream of freedom, only peace, a season without fines, a year without punishment, a harvest without theft. That, to you, would feel like mercy. And in a world built on fear, mercy is the only justice you dare to hope for. Not every day in a medieval village is shadowed by hunger, law, or toil. Some days crack open with color and sound and warmth, like a brief patch of sun breaking through a grey sky. They are few. They do not last. But they matter. Feast days, weddings, births, moments when the village breathes together, laughs together, remembers what joy feels like, even if only for a little while. Harvest is over. The last sheaf of grain has been cut, tied, and hauled in. The threshing floor has done its work. The hay is stacked, the beans dried, the apples stored. The work is not done. Work is never done, but the rhythm slows, if only for a beat. This is the moment. This is when the village comes alive. A feast is declared. Perhaps it's Michaelmas, the feast of St. Michael, or maybe Martinmas, or just the simple celebration of a good yield and a frost that hasn't arrived too early. Whatever the cause, it's enough. The air is crisp. The fields are golden stubble. Smoke curls from the chimneys as fires are stoked early. You wake before dawn, not to work, but to prepare. Everyone does. Clothes are scrubbed in cold water and left to dry on branches and stones. The best tunic, the best dress, often the only good one, is shaken out and patched if needed. Hair is combed, faces are washed. Children are threatened into cleanliness. This is not an ordinary day. Food is gathered. Root vegetables, fresh bread, apples and pears. A goose maybe, if one was fattened early. Or a pig slaughtered for the occasion. Ale is brought up from the barrels in the cellar. Mead, if someone's been lucky with bees this year. If the Lord allows it, a cask of wine might appear, thin, sharp, and more ceremonial than satisfying. But still, wine. By midday, the centre of the village is loud with movement. Long tables made of planks and barrels are set out in the green. Everyone contributes something. A loaf, a jug, a stew pot filled with whatever was left in the larder. No one has much, but no one comes empty-handed. The smell of roasting meat, rare and rich, floats through the air like incense. Children dart between adults. Dogs bark and are scolded. The reeve tries to look important and fails. Even the priest smiles. And then there is music. A pipe begins to play. Simple, breathy, familiar. A fiddle joins in, rough, squealing a bit, but joyful. Maybe a drum, pounded by someone with more enthusiasm than skill. Voices rise in old songs, half remembered, half improvised. Songs of saints, of lovers, of lost sheep and found fortunes. Hands clap, feet stomp. Someone starts to dance and others follow. Laughter breaks out, not the dry chuckle of tired men, but real laughter. Full and free. For a few hours, maybe even a whole day, the village forgets the whip, the tithe, the hunger. Men raise their mugs and toast nothing in particular. Women smile at each other without worry behind their eyes. The old weep quietly, remembering other feast days, other dances, other faces. And when night comes, the fire is built high. The stars wheel above in the cold black sky. The moon watches, pale and wide. Shadows flicker against the cottages, long and alive. Couples sneak away behind hayricks. Songs soften into murmurs. Babies sleep in arms. The food is gone, the ale low, the embers settling. But no one wants to be the first to leave. They linger, soaking in the warmth of something rare. Contentment. Sometimes it's a wedding that brings the village together. Marriages are not grand affairs for peasants. They're practical unions, often arranged, rarely romantic. But still, they carry weight. A girl steps into womanhood. A boy becomes a man in the eyes of the village. There is ceremony, blessed by the priest, witnessed by the neighbours, sometimes marked with flowers and garlands. If there is time and food, a feast follows. If not, at least there is music. And dancing, always dancing. The bride's gown might be her mother's, yellowed with age, but patched with care. The groom wears his only tunic. There are no rings, not usually, no grand vows, just the words spoken, the blessing given, the shared bread, the hopeful looks. For a moment, everyone forgets that the marriage means more mouths to feed, more debts to carry, more risk in the coming winter. For a moment, there is only the sound of the fiddle, the smell of fresh bread, and two young hands held together. And then there is death, because death too is a gathering. Someone grows ill. A cough, a fever, a sudden silence, or a child doesn't wake, or an old woman slips on the ice and doesn't rise again. The village comes together, quietly this time. There is no feast, but there is food. No dancing, but there are songs, low, slow, sung in candlelight. The priest speaks Latin words most do not understand, but they nod because grief doesn't need translation. The body is wrapped in cloth, sometimes laid in a simple box, sometimes just carried on a board. It is buried in the churchyard, among the others, marked with a wooden cross if there's time, or just a stone. People cry, even the ones who didn't, like the deceased, because every death is a reminder of your own. Every funeral is a rehearsal. And after, the village goes quiet for a while. The songs stop, the children play more carefully, the laughter dims, until the next feast, the next wedding, the next moment of joy. These big events are the threads that hold the patchwork of peasant life together. Bright threads, worn thin by use and time, but stronger than they seem. You look forward to them all year. You hold on to the memory of them when the frost comes and the hunger grows and the fear returns. They remind you that you are not just a serf or a tenant or a pair of hands for the Lord's fields. You are part of something, a village, a rhythm, a world that still knows how to sing. And then, like a dream, it ends. The feast day passes. The wedding guests go home. The grave is covered. The music fades. The borrowed cloak is returned. The tunic folded away. The fire dies. And winter comes again. The frost creeps under the door. The cold settles in your bones. The wind howls across the bare fields. The days shorten. The sun weakens. And you return to the rhythm, to the silence, to the struggle. But deep in your chest, behind the ache and the weariness, something small stays warm. A memory, a dance, a song, a laugh. And the knowledge that one day, if you're lucky, the village will feast again. So now, you know. You've walked the muddy lanes and felt the rough leather of a ploughman's hands. You've shivered beside a smoky hearth and swallowed barley bread dry as dust. You've risen before the sun to tend someone else's field, prayed not to get sick, prayed not to get caught stealing firewood, prayed that your children wouldn't starve before spring. You've squatted over a hole in the frostbitten earth and whispered thanks over a stew that tasted like roots and memories. You've listened to the creak of wood in the wind, the muffled gossip by the well, the bell tolling high above in a church built by hands just like yours. You've felt the ache in your back after a day that started before light and ends only when your feet give out. You've scratched at the fleas in your tunic, smelled the sweat of your neighbour in the chapel pew, ducked your head as the reeve passed. You've feared the stocks, you've feared the tithe, you've feared waking up to find a loved one cold and still, and you're not even through the week. You wouldn't last, not a day, not without clean water and privacy and shoes that fit, not without choices, not without something more than barley and prayer and the dim hope that the next Lord might be less cruel than the last. You wouldn't last because you weren't born into it, because you weren't shaped by it, because you've never had to be, but they did. They woke to the same grey dawns. They buried children and kept going. They patched the same tunic for 10 winters and still found a way to make it to the feast with a smile. They lived under lords who would never know their names. They broke their backs to build someone else's wealth. They prayed in a language they didn't understand and believed, because believing made the hunger hurt less. They sang songs to remember what it felt like to laugh. They told stories so that something of them would outlast the season. They didn't leave books behind. No great chronicles or marble statues or stained glass portraits. Their names are gone, mostly. Worn away by time. Forgotten by record. But the world they carried did not fall. The castles stood because peasants kept digging. The kings reigned because taxes were paid, because bread was baked, because someone kept the sheep alive through the frost. The past is not just made of battles and banners. It is made of barefoot mothers stirring soup, of fathers mending harnesses by firelight, of children chasing each other between rows of beans, laughing even as the wind bites. It is made of survival, not glorious or noble, but constant, quiet, and unbearably human. They endured, not because life was fair, but because it was theirs, because the field needed ploughing, because the family needed feeding, because the saints were watching, because it was what had to be done, and they did it, again and again. Season after season, year after year. That is the quiet triumph of the medieval peasant. Not rebellion, not escape, but endurance. And now, here you are, hundreds of years later, lying warm, listening to their world echo softly in your ears. You don't have to carry water in the dark or kneel before a steward with your head bowed. You don't have to wake before dawn and hope the fever passes. You're here, in a bed that doesn't crawl, with walls that keep out the wind, letting the weight of their world drift over you, like the distant sound of church bells at dusk. So let it drift. Let the roosters quiet. Let the fields grow still. Let the cold, hard soil lie untouched just for a while. Let the children sleep, the fire burn low, the ale go flat in the cup. Let the Reeves tally book close for the night. Let the burden be theirs no longer. You've walked their path, but only in shadow. You've felt their struggle, but only in story. You've breathed their world for a moment, but they lived it all their lives. You wouldn't last, but they did. And now it's time to let it go. Let the bells fade. Let the sheep settle. Let the hearth crackle its last quiet pop. You're safe. You're warm. And the past can rest. While you do too. Good night.